Hello, my dear friend. In this video, you will see real moments where Americans try to improve, speed up, or fix everyday situation in prison, only to discover something unexpected. The system doesn't adapt to you. It continues without you.
I once watched an American confidently explain to a London taxi driver that traffic would move faster if everyone just used initiative instead of rules. He said it like he was fixing the entire system mid-ride. The driver didn't argue. Just nodded slowly and said, "We tried that once." The American leaned forward. "And?" The driver glanced in the mirror. "That's why we made rules." Silence filled the car like a quiet correction. At a bakery in London, I watched a guy ask if they could speed things up a bit because he was in a hurry. The woman behind the counter smiled politely. "We're already going at the correct speed." He laughed, thinking it was a joke. "No, I mean faster." She nodded. "That would be incorrect." He blinked, unsure how to argue with something framed as accuracy instead of efficiency. He tried again, softer this time. "I just need a quick coffee." She gestured gently to the line behind him. "So does everyone else." No irritation. No escalation. Just a perfectly balanced reality. He looked around, expecting support, but everyone avoided eye contact. Not rude, just aligned. He stepped back slightly, realizing this wasn't a negotiation. It was a structure. And he had walked into it like it was optional. In a London office, I saw an American new hire suggest they to skip the small talk and get straight to the point during a meeting. He said it confidently, like he was improving efficiency. The room went quiet. Not offended, just recalibrating. His manager smiled politely. "The small talk is the point." He frowned. "But it's not productive." She nodded. "It is. You're just not seeing the product yet." He tried to pivot. "In the States, we move faster." She paused slightly. "We're not moving slowly." That landed differently. Because it wasn't defensive. It was precise. The conversation didn't speed up after that. It actually slowed down. Intentionally. And somehow, he became the only person out of sync in a room that never raised its voice. That's when I realized, tempo here isn't accidental. It's controlled. Here's the pattern: Americans try to optimize the moment. Brits protect the system. One pushes forward. The other holds shape. And the weirdest part? Nobody argues. The system doesn't fight you, it just refuses to move. And that's stillness? That's what breaks momentum. Not resistance. Absence. It's like trying to push against something that doesn't react. Eventually, you stop pushing. Not because you lost, but because nothing acknowledged the fight. At a train platform in Manchester, I saw a man try to board before everyone else. "I've got a tight connection," he said, stepping forward confidently. The conductor looked at him briefly. "So does the train." That was it. No explanation. No tone. Just a statement that somehow reset the hierarchy instantly. The man laughed awkwardly, waiting for flexibility. None came. The train didn't adjust. It simply waited for the correct order to happen. He hesitated, then tried logic. "But I'll miss my next train." The conductor nodded. "Then you'll take the next one." No sympathy. Not cold, just complete. That's the difference. The system acknowledged his problem, without adopting it. He stepped back slowly, like he had just discovered a rule that didn't bend under pressure. Not because it was harsh, but because it didn't recognize urgency as authority. In a restaurant in Oxford, I watched a man ask if he could customize a traditional dish to make it better. He said it casually, like collaboration. The waiter listened politely. "You may order something else." The man smiled. "No, I want this, but improved." The waiter nodded. "It is already the improved version." That sentence hung in the air like a closed door disguised as politeness. He pushed again. I just think it would taste better my way. The waiter leaned slightly closer. Then you would enjoy cooking. No sarcasm. No edge. Just a gentle reroute back to reality. The man sat back, slightly stunned, not rejected, just redirected. And that's when it clicked. British politeness doesn't block you directly. It simply removes every path except the correct one. After a few moments like this, a pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Americans assume systems exist to serve people. Brits act like people exist to fit systems. Neither is wrong, but they don't translate. That's where the tension lives. Not in conflict, but in expectation. And once you see it, every small interaction starts to feel like a quiet test. Not of intelligence, but of alignment.
Hey friends, at this point I think nothing could surprise me anymore. I was wrong.
In a quiet hotel in Bath, I saw a man argue about checkout time. It's just 10 minutes, he said, smiling like that solved everything. The receptionist nodded. Checkout is 11. He laughed. Exactly. I'll be out at 11:10. She paused slightly. Then you will be charged for another night. Not louder. Not sharper. Just inevitable. Like gravity applied to time. He tried charm. Come on, it's basically the same thing. She shook her head gently. It is not the same thing. That's when the tone shifted, not hers, his. Because he realized there was no emotional entry point. No flexibility hidden behind politeness. Just a boundary presented as fact. He checked his watch, recalculating his entire morning around a rule that didn't even acknowledge negotiation. At a grocery store self-checkout, an American tried to bag items faster than the machine could register them. This thing's slow, he muttered, moving ahead anyway. The screen froze. A staff member approached. You've gone too fast. He laughed. That's not a thing. She nodded. It is here. He stepped back, confused. The system wasn't broken. It had just rejected his pace. He tried again, slower this time. Carefully. Almost respectfully. The machine responded instantly. See, she said calmly. He stared at the screen like it had just taught him something personal. Because it had. The system didn't adapt to speed, it required alignment. And once he matched it, everything worked perfectly. Not better. Just correctly. That word kept showing up in ways that felt quietly absolute. That's the hidden mechanism, control without confrontation. In the US, systems often flex to keep you moving. Here, systems stay still and make you adjust. And the adjustment isn't forced, it's revealed. You realize it on your own, usually 1 second too late. That delay? That's where the lesson lands. Not loudly. Not publicly. Just internally, where it's harder to argue with. At a small airport gate, I saw a man arrive right as boarding closed. The plane was still there. Door shut. I'm here, he said, slightly out of breath. The agent looked at him calmly. Boarding is closed. He laughed. But the plane hasn't left. She nodded. Correct. That was the entire exchange. Presence didn't equal permission. And that distinction hit harder than any argument could. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. There has to be something you can do. She paused. There is not. Not I can't. Not we can't. Just, it doesn't exist. The option itself wasn't part of reality here. He stood there, processing something invisible. Not rejection, finality. The system hadn't denied him. It had simply moved on without him. At a bookstore in Cambridge, I heard a man suggest they reorganize sections to make more sense. He pointed at categories like he was solving a puzzle. The clerk listened politely. They are arranged by subject. He smiled. Yeah, but you could improve the flow. The clerk nodded. People find things. That was the whole defense. Not optimization. Function. He tried one more time. But it could be better. The clerk tilted his head slightly. Better for whom? That question didn't escalate. It ended the idea. Because suddenly, improvement required justification, not just confidence. The man paused, then shrugged. Never mind. And just like that, his certainty dissolved, not through opposition, but through a single, quiet request for clarity. In a pub in Leeds, I watched a guy try to start a loud toast. To new friends, he said, raising his glass. A few people glanced over. No one joined. Conversations continued. He held the glass there for a second too long, waiting for the moment to catch. It didn't. He slowly lowered it, smiling through the silence like it might still work. He laughed it off. Tough crowd, he said lightly. His friend nodded. Different rhythm. That's when it clicked again. It wasn't rejection, it was misalignment. The gesture wasn't wrong. It just didn't belong here. And without shared timing, even friendliness feels misplaced. Not offensive. Just unnecessary. Which somehow feels worse. By now, the pattern is clear. Americans push for interaction. Brits filter for context. One assumes openness. The other assumes structure. And when those collide, nothing explodes. It just doesn't connect. Like two signals on different frequencies. You can speak louder, faster, more confidently, but if the system doesn't recognize your signal, it won't translate. It will simply continue, unchanged.
This last one, I still don't fully understand.
At a museum in London, I watched a man ask if they could update an exhibit to make it more engaging. Maybe add screens or something, he suggested. The guide nodded politely. It is original. He smiled. Yeah, but people expect more now. The guide paused. This has been here for 300 years. He leaned back. Exactly. Time for an upgrade. The guide held eye contact for just a second longer. It has survived 300 years without one. That wasn't defensive. It was complete. The exhibit didn't need improvement. It needed understanding. The man nodded slowly, like he was accepting something he couldn't quite argue with. Because you can't optimize something built to outlast optimization itself. At a crosswalk in London, I saw a man step into the street before the light changed. No cars coming. We can go, he said confidently to no one in particular. Nobody moved. Not one person. He stepped back after a second, glancing around. It's safe, he added. Still nothing. The light turned green. Everyone crossed together. Like a quiet agreement he hadn't been part of. He laughed awkwardly. You guys really wait every time? A woman next to him replied softly, yes. No explanation. No lecture. Just consistency. And that's what made it unsettling. Not the rule, but the collective commitment to it. He nodded, but slower this time. Because for the first time, it didn't feel like inefficiency. It felt like something deeper. Something shared. That's the difference most people miss. It's not about rules, it's about trust. In Britain, following the system signals respect for everyone else in it. In America, bending the system signals initiative. Same action, opposite meaning. And when those meanings collide, behavior gets misread instantly. Confidence looks like disruption. Structure looks like resistance. Neither side is wrong, but both feel completely justified. At a small cafe in York, I watched a man complain that his order was taking too long. In the States, this would be faster, he said, checking his watch. The barista nodded. It will be ready when it is ready. He laughed. That's not how service works. She looked at him calmly. It is here. No edge. Just location-based reality. He tried to escalate slightly. So you're saying I just wait? She nodded once. Yes. That word landed heavier than it should have. Not because it was rude, but because it closed every alternative. Waiting wasn't a suggestion. It was the only option. He stepped aside, quieter now. Not defeated, just adjusted. Like he'd finally stopped expecting the system to notice him specifically. At a countryside bus stop, I saw a man wave down a bus that wasn't scheduled to stop there. It's on the way, he called out, smiling. The driver slowed slightly, then kept going. No acknowledgement. The man stood there, stunned. He saw me, he said. A local nearby replied, yes. He frowned. So why didn't he stop? The answer came gently. Because it's not a stop. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just a boundary defined by geography, not emotion. The man looked down the road, then back at the sign beside him. For the first time, he actually read it. Slowly. Like it might contain more than information. Like it might explain the entire interaction he had just lost without ever entering. At a dinner in London, I watched a man try to split the bill fairly by calculating exact item costs. You owe £12.73, he told someone across the table. A British woman smiled politely. We'll just split it evenly. He shook his head. That's not accurate. She nodded. It's easier. He insisted. But it's not fair. She paused. It is here. He looked around for support. Nobody moved. Nobody argued. They just waited. Eventually, he sighed and agreed. And in that moment, fairness lost to harmony. Not because it was wrong, but because it didn't fit the social priority. And that's the quiet truth running through all of this, being right doesn't always mean being aligned. What all these moments reveal isn't ignorance, it's identity. Americans move through the world expecting it to respond. Brits move through it expecting to interpret it. One speaks first. The other listens first. And when those instincts collide, nobody wins. Nobody loses. The system continues. And somewhere in that silence, you realize something uncomfortable. Confidence travels loud, but understanding travels further.
My dear friends, did you like this story? If so, like and write in the comments what topics you would like to hear the next stories on. Thank you. Bye bye.